So have you noticed with people, you have two different groups of people in life, in my opinion. You have the everyday person who walks amongst the herd of society, and then you have the independent thinker. So the independent thinker is a very rare person. But before we get into that, let's talk about the ordinary person with a herd mentality. So this person with a herd mentality, basically this is the majority of our population of society. These people really don't put too much thought to the rules that govern them, the taxes that they pay. They don't really pay attention to world events, spiritual events. They're just really immersed or really drawn to entertainment. Really, just cheap entertainment. And there's nothing wrong with that. Not to say that I or people who are independent thinkers don't indulge at times in entertainment, but I think what the difference is between the person who has a herd mentality, I think that they base all their enjoyment, all their pleasure, majority of it, in just those things, following celebrities, following pop culture, and really not being, I would say, curious enough to want to get outside their box or understand their realm of or get outside their scope of understanding of the world and the way they view the world. They just choose not to do that. And I think the independent thinker, these people like to have a good time as too, but I think in the back of their mind, they're always questioning society. They're questioning what they're doing and why they're doing it. They question other people's motives. And more than that, they really are curious about life. It's like life is it's a lifelong journey. Like you're always wanting to continue to basically expand your level of understanding of the world and things around you. That's just what you want to do because you're just curious as to how things work. And there's nothing wrong, again, with watching TV, but I think when you immerse yourself in these things, you kind of it hurts your creative thinking. It hurts your ability to just hold an independent thought. So, I made a decision a long time ago. I don't want to watch TV. TV, to me, as I grew to understand it, it's just a means of wasted time, false information, and really subconscious programming in my mind. That's what it is. Because I think that it doesn't matter how strong mentally you are. I think eventually, just by repetition, the more you see things, the more you hear things, you just tend to believe it subconsciously. You just do. And, I think on the news, when you see certain things, when you watch certain programs, I believe that subconsciously it conditions you. I do. I believe it conditions you. And really, more than that, it's a big waste of time to watch hours of TV, each evening. Because there's only so many hours in one day. And I think we should be making the most of it. Either if you want to get some information in you that's going to be online or if it's whatever, if it's on TV, but just make sure it's the good news. True information. Not this stuff that we're fed through, these major networks. Because it's not information. It really is just disinformation. And, to me, it's stunning. And I don't watch TV at all, but what I would say is that I don't tune into the news that much. But when I do look, I don't see much mention today about really the dire state of our economy. Not just our economy, but the world economy. I don't hear people on the news or talking about this often. I mean, every now and then we hear it, but it's not as much as what President Trump said or what he tweeted or what he did or didn't do. I mean, to me, I just think that the news, to me, it's just too much. They have an agenda. Okay, you want to take all attention off everything else and put it on Trump. That's okay, but it's just, to me, that's not information. It's not information, and I think there's so many of the things in the world that we need to be knowledgeable of and be aware of. But unfortunately, that information is not out there. You have to seek that information, but just it's not out there. And I just think if we had more independent thinkers than people who have a herd mentality, we would have a lot less issues in society. Society would run much more smoothly. There would be a lot of things that we wouldn't have. A lot of the evils we wouldn't have if people didn't have a herd mentality, really. I mean, one of the big things we wouldn't have is racism. It wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have tribalism. It wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have this gang mentality. It wouldn't exist because people would question why they're doing it and to what end. And when you have a gang mentality, you're almost always going to be wrong. I mean, because the gang mentality is that we're against this and we're all against it. And it doesn't matter what happens, we're just against it. And then you have another group of people are the same way, and then they clash. This is how we have war. But if people took every situation on a case-by-case basis, we wouldn't have tribalism, we wouldn't have racism, we wouldn't have classism, we wouldn't have these things. But this is, again, it's herd mentality. It's conventional thinking. And this is what gets people in trouble, even the most educated people sometimes. It doesn't matter how educated you are. I just think it's what kind of person you are. Are you a true free thinker? Because there are a lot of people who have gone through Ivy League schools, and they're very intelligent people, but some of them just aren't free thinkers. It's just a regular free thinker. It's something that you have or you don't have, regardless of what your IQ is. And if we had more of that, society would function much more smoothly. It just would. But again, I think we need to understand as human beings is that human beings are very complex creatures, and we are a creature that contradicts ourselves constantly. It's one big contradiction when you deal with people, and we just need to understand that. So I think what most people do when they see a person or who is kind of associated with a certain behavior, they just write off the whole group and say, oh, this group they're all this way or they're all that way. And this could apply to every group, every nationality, ethnicity, I should say. It can apply to anyone. But I think that's just a herd mentality, because when you really go out and meet people and talk to people, any person, if you go out and talk to people of any different ethnicity, people have much more in common than we do differences. I mean, people just dwell on the small amount of things that we have that are not in common. Of course we have our own cultures and stuff like that. That's to be understood. But again, most people have far more in common. I mean, you can find a person in China and a person here in the U.S. People have far more in common than we do different. That's what's different. But again, unfortunately, herd mentality tries to simplify nuances amongst people. It wants the simplest solution to any problem. And, to a very simple-minded person, if they go to a country and they have one bad experience, then they write off the whole country. Oh, they're all this way, they're all that way. Perfect example, I remember I was in Hong Kong one time. And I was in Hong Kong and I met a bunch of Brits who were bankers. And these guys, they're Brits, bankers. They're working in Hong Kong, making big bucks. And I told them, we had a conversation. I told them I was going into China, mainland China, and China has a reputation in Hong Kong or amongst some European countries as it gets a bad rap. They were saying, oh, it's going to be a sideshow out there. I've seen people urinate in the streets. Oh my goodness, it's terrible out there. And I went to China, and it wasn't that bad. It really wasn't that bad. People generalize. I had a good time. One small incident in China, but we won't mention that. But again, you just can't generalize about people. Whole 1.2 billion people. It's all one big circus, right? It's very unfortunate, but again, we need to get back to free thinking. We need to start doing this. We need to, focus on original thoughts, on creativity. And sooner or later, when we do that, we can deprogram for what this world has been, so our society has been programming people. We can kind of deprogram a bit and think for ourselves and try to solve some of our own problems that we have in this world and stop relying on or putting our hopes in presidents. That's insanity. I think when I see people saying, I'm going to vote, I'm going to make a difference, I'm going to vote because this president, he's going to get all my objectives done. It's just so funny. People don't understand that presidents are a figurehead. They can make some executive orders, but for the most part, it's almost never going to trickle down to the little man. Never. The way it works is that the rich are first. They're first in line to get whatever the president does as far as changes or economic stimulus. Then if there's anything left, it trickles over to the middle class. And then usually there's not much left to go down to the lower class. And that's the way it's been. I believe the system is designed to be a certain way, and the president is just a representative who speaks, who he herds the sheep, so to speak. He tries to get them in the one accord. Of course, he can't do that. So what they'll do is, there are too many people in this country to just have one opinion. Now, I think before we had Republican and Democrat, right? So back in the day, the country, we had the Republicans and Democrats, and it worked. That was when the country was majority white. It worked. It was majority white and conservative, and you had Democrats and Republicans. But now the country has so many foreign-born immigrants, people who are now second and third generation from different places abroad, and they all have different belief systems. So it's hard to, try to fit all these different groups of people into Republican and Democrats. That's tough. So I think now, what they've been doing, they've been trying to figure out ways to throw you more candidates that fit what they feel like the country wants. There's no real free choice, but that's what they'll do. They'll throw those people in there and say, we want you to go, and then they'll pick who they think will be the best of both worlds. Who's going to serve our interest the most, and who's going to do the best job with managing our country. Our country. The super rich is their country. They own everything in it. I believe that there is a group of people in the world, a small group of people, probably about a group of people, I'd say about maybe 20 families. And I think these 20 families own 80% of the wealth in the world, I believe. Just what I believe. So, that's the way it is. I believe that's the way society has been set up. And a lot of people just don't understand that. There's only going to be a certain amount of change based upon what the select group of people want. Outside of that, there will be no change outside of that. So, again, people need to get back to being independent thinkers and try to seek out information outside of the mainstream, because there's just not a lot of information in the mainstream that's going to really inform you like you need to be informed. So do that. You look at a lot of documentaries online that speak about truth, real truth. Seek those out. I'm not going to have to tell you what it is. You can, do your own search on what's real. But, yeah, thanks for listening.